Welcome to Vigilant News Interviews. Today we have Dr. Tom Grahm. He began his journey in 2014 at Life University in Marietta, Georgia. He studied health science, personal training, and biochemistry, focusing on the human body and positive psychology. He graduated with a doctorate of chiropractic in 2017 and continues to study positive psychology. His mission is to inspire others towards healthier living. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. Glad to be here.
So you and I met at a conference called Next Steps, kind of like a health freedom conference, I guess. And there was a lot of really interesting things discussed there. And I particularly like some of the stuff that you were sharing. So do me a favor, share with my audience, who you are, what your passions are, and how you got started and what you're doing.
Well, I'll say growing up and stuff, I was a little bit of a health case. So had born with a birth defect and parotid gland on the left side of my face, had multiple surgeries when I was younger on that. I've had surgeries on my knees, my shoulder. So I've been under the knife like probably 10 times for different reasons. And I'll say my mom was awesome, I'll say, in her approach with, helping me be the best I can. But she was actually a little bit crunchy, kind of hippie, and used some natural remedies and stuff like that as well along the way. And it was really the thing that started my passion. I was kind of an athlete in high school, and then I worked construction towards the end of my high school to start just making money, things like that. It was a lucrative business where I grew up. But it was kind of after high school where I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? Those big questions all of us ask, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in that time period, it was taking a nutrition class and a anatomy physiology class that I actually kind of fell in love with the human body initially. Being an athlete, I saw the importance of health, and always had a respect for the medical community and everything, having gone through so much when I was younger as well. But it was kind of funny so I decided I wanted to potentially go to med school, and started my undergraduate degree in basically exercise science and biochemistry. And then fell more in love with the human body. But it was kind of in my college career. I had another chiropractor that was at the college that became a mentor as well. And I had seen a chiropractor for a couple injuries before while I was in high school, and talking more with the mentor at the college started to kind of open up my eyes to a bigger picture of helping people. So it became one of those situations where I could start helping athletes and stuff like that potentially on the front end. So it wasn't until my senior year of college, my mother ended up passing away, unfortunately. So kind of a big life hit, and made it through the end of my undergraduate career. But it was just after I graduated. I remember I was watching this drug commercial, and there was, this guy walking through a field dancing with a bear or whatever. And then in the background, you hear him, like, this may cause death, and your liver might never work again. And then, you know what I mean? So it's like this. But it was this dialogue that was probably a minute or minute and a half long that was like happening in the background. Well, whatever is happening on the screen is completely irrelevant. And that was the moment I realized that I wanted to really start helping people on the front end instead of being more reactive. Because if anyone's studied anything about the medical community, when it comes to emergency medicine, acute care, and everything like that, we have some of the best as far as keeping people alive and making sure that people can get repaired. But really, the Western medicine doesn't have a clue what to do when it comes to chronic diseases and how people get to be so sick. And studying through undergrad and everything like that, all my health sciences, it's no secret that America is one of the least healthy It's basically the least healthy industrialized nation there is.
Mm.
So we spend more than double the amount of money on healthcare than any other country in the world, and we're getting basically some of the last place results as far as how healthy our country is. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that maybe in our country we're not using very good strategies, right?
Right.
And it was kind of that started leading me into wanting to really help people on the front end and become a chiropractor. And then once I got into chiropractic school, then we went down the rabbit hole, because really the chiropractors I would call the rebels of the healthcare profession. Really, it goes back in history as well, because at one point in time the medical association was trying to take out anything that wasn't Western based, petroleum based medicine, and chiropractic just happened to be the biggest of them. But they were gunning for naturopaths, homeopaths, chiropractors, magnetic healers, um, name your natural medicine, doctors of osteopathy as well, but name your natural medicine provider. The American Medical Association was gunning for anything that wasn't Western medicine at that point, and went under, like, it was like a 20-year long legal battle and everything like that about this. So again, this is very you can easily vet this and look this up. But yeah, eventually the chiropractors finally won. But just in the premise of everything, the biggest reason that the chiropractors won is because the whole premise is we're practicing chiropractic, we're not practicing medicine.
Mhm.
Chiropractic and medicine are actually opposite philosophies when you really look at it, because medicine, whether you're talking about Western medicine or natural medicine, medicine is the treatment of symptoms.
Right.
That's if you don't have a symptom and you go to the medical doctor, what do they do for you?
Not
Right?
much. Yeah.
There's nothing they can do for you, right? Chiropractic, on the other hand, is built off of deductive logic and studying universal principles that simply holds in the premise that your brain right here is the most important organ of your body.
Mm.
The definition of death is that your brain stops working. The sad part, the personal part about that is my mother died from a brain stroke or an aneurysm,
Wow.
and she was on life support for several days. But really, what made them classify her as dead is when they took her off life support, her brain stem didn't turn back on. And anyone that studies anything about brain and health, the brain stem is what's responsible for all your vitals. So your heartbeat, your lungs, your blood pressure, your pH balance. The brain stem is the part of the brain that processes all that information to keep us alive. So oftentimes when people are in comas, the frontal cortex, our thinking part of the brain, is off, but our brain stem is still alive. So at least we're living at that point. But if you have a bad enough injury and you try keeping people on life support, all that, and the brain stem doesn't turn back on, that's the legal definition of death.
Mm. I
So
see. Okay.
with that in mind, the brain is the most important part of the body. This is our CPU. This is what processes everything. And then it goes through the nervous system, down through your spine, and then out to all the different cells and organs and tissues in your body to keep things all in homeostasis, or to keep you alive. So that if you start running, your heartbeat raises, your respiration raises, right? There's so many things that are happening in the background, right? But it's that brain and the nervous system communication that's vital to keeping the body communicating properly and healthy. And the premise of chiropractic is simply that if we have stressors in life, whether they're physical stressors, chemical stressors, mental or emotional stressors, that if the brain can't fully process stuff that's happening in our life, our body starts to go into defense.
Mm.
And when our body starts going into defense, the ability to communicate down through your body and through the system starts to diminish. And needless to say, the less communication you have throughout your body, the more sick, the more diseased, the more dysfunctional you become, because your body's no longer communicating at 100%.
Right.
So the big picture is that chiropractic isn't specifically a treatment to any one thing, but based off of a system that the brain and nervous system are the numero uno system. And if we have stress stored in our body that we can help your body process and alleviate, we know that your body's going to start functioning and healing at a better rate and making you a more optimal human.
Mm.
Does that make
Right.
sense?
It does. Yeah. And, maybe I'm just a nescient in this kind of stuff, but I just kind of assumed that chiropractic work was about, popping joints and moving your body. And it was more of almost like a different style of like physical fitness, maybe. But
Yep.
it seems like it's way more holistic than I originally thought. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. It absolutely is. I almost the analogy I give to people a lot of the time is I look at chiropractic as going to the gym, but for your brain and nervous system.
Mm. Hmm.
So we go to the gym to build our muscles, right? To make us stronger. Same thing with the chiropractor is if you go to the chiropractor, you're going there to help alleviate that stress and help your brain and nervous system fire and wire at a higher rate, making you again function and heal better.
Yeah, and I really like the picture you painted there about how it's it helps these systems communicate with each other because anytime we wanted to study the way a machine works, like a car, or a business, or even a society, so it doesn't really matter what the complexity of the machine is. If it's meant to work as a single thing, then it has to communicate within itself properly.
Yep.
And psychologically, for example, if you have a part of yourself that's been compartmentalized because of trauma, like early childhood trauma, then that part of you is not integrating, which means it's like walking around with a leg that doesn't work. There's just something that's not quite right.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like chiropractic is based on that philosophy, and then is there more than just I don't know what the right term is here. So please share with me, like, what is the technique as far as like the moving and the adjusting of the body? Is there a specific thing that you're trying to accomplish there?
So I'll say the biggest definition of chiropractic, like if you're going to make it the most specific you could, is that you're adjusting the spinal column to help the brain start processing information better.
Hmm.
Now,
Got it.
the big picture of it is that we're helping the brain and nervous system function better, and the the view of every doctor that's out there is obviously going to be a little bit different. And big picture of things is that there's actually over 350 techniques of chiropractic.
Hmm.
But the whole thing is we want to see the system change, right? So the question then becomes, what are you measuring then before an adjustment and then after an adjustment that would start pointing towards this person as having higher function and higher neural integrity?
Right.
So some chiropractors are very x-ray based, and they will adjust you and then they give you stretches and strengthening. That's not exactly chiropractic, but they're things that help the neural integrity through the spinal column. So if your spinal column is stronger, you're less likely to get knocked out of place, right?
Hmm.
So between chiropractic, strengthening, and stretching, we can start to help basically get the proper curves back in your spine, for instance. And there's tons of research that says if the curves in your spine are a certain way, then your neural integrity, the firing in your body is going to be a lot higher, right?
Right.
Where if your body starts becoming distorted and you start seeing these curves disappear, you're going to watch that person's health go down and symptoms go down as well. So
Mhm.
that would just be x-rays. But what other things? Some people use temperature readings on the spine to see if there's differences in the temperature. Some people use muscle testing and posture analysis. So the whole question is what is the doctor measuring beforehand and then after that is alluding or pointing to the fact that this person is getting higher neural function and starting to heal better, eventually feel better.
Right. Okay. So it almost sounds like, to use an analogy, if you're, if you're living with a hoarder or you are a hoarder, then you got stuff in the hallways, every room is just jam-packed and loaded. So eventually your dining room doesn't function as a dining room anymore. It functions as a storage facility or something like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Or your hallways are so overloaded you can't move large items from one room to another. And it kind of sounds like, similarly, the central nervous system being like the main information highway of the body needs to
Yep.
be working properly for everything else to be working properly. Is that right?
Absolutely. And depending, because again, the brain is processing physical, chemical, mental, emotional stuff every second of every day. If the brain can process that stuff well, then we're evolving, adapting, and growing, thriving. If we're going through life and the brain stops being able to process things well, then that actually becomes densities in different parts of our body.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what part of your body starts densifying and stops proper communication, right, the cells that are in that area start to dysfunction. And depending on what cell type it is, if it gets bad enough, we give it X, Y, or Z disease name. So if our bones stop processing life properly because it's disconnected, we call it arthritis. If it's
Mm-hmm.
our heart, we call it cardiac disease. If it's our pancreas, it could be diabetes, right?
Right, right.
So depending on what cell type, the Merck manual is this big manual, but depending on the cell type that starts dysfunctioning due to lack of communication, we give it a different disease name,
I see. Okay.
right? The
Yep.
big picture again, though, is that if I'll say I'll put this in here just as a caveat. If people are listening to this and they want to take away one big message from this podcast, from what I'm teaching about right now, at least, the power that made the body heals the body. The
Mm,
power that took two cells, a sperm and an egg, right? They came together and they created all 100 trillion cells in your body, right? That intelligence still lives within all of us. So if you give the body and brain the right ingredients, right? So things actually start communicating properly again, your body has the ability to heal itself.
right. Wow. And there's so many places we could go with this. Okay, so one thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to touch on some of the kind of common myths of chiropractic work and things like this. And I'm sure you have, because for those of you who don't know, because you weren't there, obviously, we went on like a river jaunt. We had a really great conversation about this, and you shared some really interesting things that I wanted to ask you about on the show, which was, why is it that the variant there's a variance there. We've heard horror stories of people, having bad experiences. There's even, like, I think there's a Joe Rogan podcast of somebody, like, saying, hey, you should definitely not do this, that chiropractors are going to kill you, all this kind of stuff. But based on what you said, it sounds like that there's, just like any field, there's people that don't know what they're doing. And to go back to what you earlier said, there's also a vested interest in discrediting this field because we've got a medical system that rules with an iron fist and an iron rod, and benefits from their competition not being around anymore. So
Yeah,
can you touch a little bit on some of that stuff?
absolutely. So I'll start with the medical system because it's really simple and yet complex at the same time. But the simplicity behind it is it's as simple as this: capitalism slash corporatism within its basic philosophy and psychology is quote unquote psychopathic in nature. And what I mean by that is that capitalism and corporatism as philosophies are all about profits. There are no, and this goes even into legal definitions, because pharmaceutical companies have a fiduciary, meaning a legal responsibility to their shareholders. They do not have a legal responsibility to your or my health.
Right.
And cures are not profitable. So that's the biggest reason why the pharmaceutical companies look at us as such a bad competition, is because we're getting people healthy and off drugs and healing properly. We're spreading the message that your body knows how to heal if you give it the right ingredients. And that includes stop eating Doritos and Coca-Cola and all this processed food. That stuff's designed to really bring you down. All
Right.
these medications are band-aids. If if someone goes on high blood pressure medication, right? Ask your doctor. Go ahead, ask them. If you're on high blood pressure medication, any medication out there for X, Y, or Z disease, ask your medical doctor, okay, what's the strategy to get me off this medication? Because if I'm actually healing and becoming a higher, better person, I shouldn't need this ailment, or this, not this ailment, but this treatment forever. If you're actually treating me properly and getting me healthy, then there should be a point in time where I don't need the medication anymore. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So again, there's no there if you go to your medical doctor for any of these chronic illnesses out there, there's no strategy to get you off the medication, which means there's an inherent flaw in the uh practice of Western medicine for chronic diseases in the first place. But it's all pharmaceutical backed because there is no profit in cures. They want to be disease managers, not curers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the more drugs people are on, the more profits they make.
Right. Yep.
And that's the pharmaceutical and medical industrial complex model: is sick people make money, well people don't.
Mm-hmm.
But the sad part, again, as mentioned earlier, is that we spend 2 times as much money on healthcare in this country than any others, but we're ranked among the worst. But if you look at how many of the drugs we use in this country and everything like that, it only makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the more drugs we use, the sicker we get. It's unfortunately within the capitalistic, corporatistic society that we live in, your and my health is not priorities to corporations. They want us hook, line, and sinker, so that we become dependent on them and we keep spending the money over and over and over again. We become lifelong partners, if you will, but more like dependents.
Right.
So that's touching just on the medical part as far as coming after us. Going back to the original part, you were saying that there are these horror stories where people are saying, like Joe Rogan and stuff like that, where you're saying that they were saying, oh, don't go to a chiropractor, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not all chiropractors are created equally. Not all medical doctors are created equally, right? So there's no one of us that does everything the exact same every time, right? That's the beauty of being human, but it's also the beauty of getting to select what practitioners you work with. The lens which the doctor is looking through is often a uh, a insight into what outcomes may happen. And what I mean by that, again, there's 350 different techniques of chiropractic. Myself personally, because of the way I view the system, the body, and the brain and nervous system, I try to use as little force as possible to see change happen in the system. It doesn't take a lot to affect your brain and nervous system to the point where technically I don't even have to touch you. Even just you seeing me in this conversation is technically having an effect on your brain and nervous system, right? So all of us are affecting each other in ways to begin with. But big picture is, again, it doesn't take a lot, so I don't necessarily have to put a big force in to try to move bones, pop things, anything like that, to get your nervous system to start processing better. So my approach is using less force to get that change, because your body, if we hit the right button, quote unquote, if we hit the right place at the right time, your body's going to take that input and it's going to help shut down unnecessary programs. So I use computer lingo a lot to try to make analogies for people, and I say it's like the more stressed your life becomes, the more stuff your brain isn't processing. It's like you have too many computer programs open on the computer at once.
Right.
So if you have 1,000 computer programs open, your CPU starts to die. It starts to lag. Same thing happens with the brain and nervous system. Is if we have too much going on in life, right, then our CPU can't fully process it and starts to shut the body down to basically say, hey buddy, you got in a car accident yesterday, maybe you shouldn't go out and play football.
Right.
That's why you're hurting right now. You're
Mm-hmm.
welcome. You're welcome. Because your brain and body are so much smarter than you are, smarter than
Mm-hmm.
I am. I've never healed anyone in my life. The only person that heals you is you.
Right.
I am blessed enough to have learned a process that can help your body do that better by helping it start to recognize itself and shut down those unnecessary computer programs, right? But those things, they're there to protect you at the end of the day. If you're stressed and you're feeling like crap and everything like that, that's your body's beautiful way of telling you to go put yourself in timeout, go rest, go relax. You need to recover right now. You don't need to go out and drink more. You don't need to go out and not feel your feelings anymore. This is for your own good, right?
Right. Yep.
So that the lens that we're looking through is what can potentially start offsetting bad outcomes. So me personally, I use less force because I find to be a higher echelon in that. If I can use less force and get the same change in your body's going to do it better than I can. Your body's also going to learn better in the process. So that's my personal reason for why I practice the way I do with less force. That being said, I love chiropractic in all realms, and all chiropractors really out there, just like medical doctors, we're out here trying to help people, right? But it's when we start becoming a little bit too cocky, too uh, one-sided into things, that you're more likely to make a mistake. So first thing would be, if you don't listen to the person that's right in front of you, right? And maybe they have some red flags, yellow flags that are going on right now. Maybe going to you right now isn't the best for them. Maybe they need to go to the medical doctor, get some imaging, make sure nothing's really bad is going on right now, right? So number one is listening to the person in front of you. Where are they at? What are they going through? Is being in my office right now the best thing for them? So that's step one. Then step two is, okay, maybe I've dealt with this person 100 different times at this point. They're having some neck pain, back pain, yada, yada. When we become too focused on something simple, like a lot of chiropractors, myself as well, I still what we call osseously adjust, where you do still put force into the spine, and oftentimes we hear a cavitation or a click or a pop noise, right? So that noise is generally just expanding gas. But when
Mm-hmm.
people become too focused on getting that pop or crack, right, some of these people just start adding more and more force into the system. And bottom line, the more force you put into someone's body, more likely that a bad outcome might happen. So
Yep.
the most common injury, malpractice wise, that happens in chiropractic is actually a broken rib.
Mm.
Usually on an elderly lady, she's got osteoporosis or osteopenia, so her bone density is starting to decalcify, and bone density is starting to go down. So those elderly ladies are the people that are more likely to have a negative outcome with a broken rib, for instance, if someone's adding a lot of force to their spine, right?
Right.
And then the third aspect, I'll say, the one that oftentimes gets people so nervous in the chiropractic realm is like, oh, chiropractors cause strokes, so when they adjust your neck, it's going to make you have a stroke or an aneurysm, right? Has it happened? Yes, of course it's happened. But the research on this is also showing that the people that have that happen to them already have something going on in their body that isn't easily recognizable. So that stroke was already in the realm of happening even before they stepped in the chiropractor's office,
Mm-hmm.
because the studies have showed that the chance of someone walking into a chiropractor's office and then walking out and having a stroke versus someone walking into a medical doctor's office and walking out and having a stroke is equivalent.
I see. Yep.
Right? So if that disease process or that physiologic process is already in way, then it was already kind of bound into the essence of things. So it's not really the chiropractor that caused the stroke. Maybe it was the last little straw on the camel's back, but when the thing is already in session, already happening, right, then it was a bound outcome regardless of whether they saw the chiropractor or not.
Right.
And they say it's like a 1 to 2 in a million is essentially the rates they give on that. But big picture of things, again, try to take that 10,000-foot view to get a more accurate depiction. You or anyone that uses chiropractic has more of a chance of dying from taking Tylenol than they do from seeing a chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how safe it is. Like my malpractice insurance is basically $100 a month, $1,200 a year. To put it in perspective, an anesthesiologist's malpractice insurance is like $250,000 a year.
Wow.
So yeah, my sister was an endoscopic tech working with a GI doctor, She was just a technician, and her malpractice insurance was $4,600 a year as a technician.
My God. Wow.
So chiropractic is basically one of the safest things you could ever do, as far as like people are scared of going in and bad things happening. Again, coming from the lens where the doctor's coming from, if there's potential stuff in the system kind of predisposing you to injury in the first place, might happen. Um, Again, another reason why I lean towards the low force approach is because I'm really looking for your body to give me feedback for what's going to be helpful or hurtful. I'm not just trying to pop or crack things. That's not the outcome that's saying, all right, I made this neurologic change that's going to best help this person.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's my personal philosophy. Um, there's, again, people are on all spectrums, and I love the profession. We're all really trying to help people. But again, there are ebbs and flows, like some people just are more used to the osseous adjusting, things like that, and the more force you add into someone, yep, the more likely something bad may happen.
Right.
But grand scheme of things, it's still one of the safest professions out there as far as getting any sort of treatment.
Well, I mean, it kind of sounds like if you're a hypochondriac and you're going to the doctor, every chance you can get, eventually
Yes.
somebody's going to find something, but what they do to you might not help any problems necessarily. It almost sounds like something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. So that was really helpful, I think. Did you have something more you wanted to add?
I was just going to ask if that kind of covered all aspects of the question you just asked. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Because, I've actually only been adjusted a handful of times, but a good friend of ours, actually, Paul, he's been to chiropractors quite a bit. I used to live in Virginia, and there was a man who was a chiropractor. He studied this thing called German New Medicine. I don't know if you've
Oh
ever
yeah,
heard of it.
yep,
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Which is a whole fascinating subject for those who want to. It's kind of like the science of how the creative energy of your body can either create disease or not. Kind of something like that is the way I like to think about it. But it it remind that not only that subject, but the whole idea of the chiropractor concept is it's almost like being aware of how your choices have impact. So, for example, I spent, I've been a computer jockey for a while. Most of my time is sitting in front of a screen, for better or for worse. I prefer not to do that, but that's the way reality is right now for me.
yep,
And so, if I don't do exercise, if I don't move my body, particularly, I have this like whole like arm exercise thing where I whip my arm and back around. It almost looks like I'm doing like a snow angel, but standing up.
yep,
And before I would do that, I would have all sorts of neck pain. I'd call it computer neck or laptop neck, where it's like, man,
yep.
I'm sure you've seen this. And
Oh
just
yeah,
since I started incorporating that, I have like no pain anymore in my body. And so it kind of, in my mind, having studied health for a while now, not to the degree that you have, but just in my own time trying to figure out things, it almost seems like if your body and your mind too, your emotions, your being, if it can move in a direction, you probably should move it in that direction at least some of the time. And doing so kind of keeps you healthy in all respects. Would you say that's kind of like a good description?
yeah, absolutely. And I'll say I in my office, the talk that I gave at the Next Steps conference as well is basically a version of what I call my Health 101 talk. But excuse me, the majority of what I talk about in my Health 101 talk is about the brain and nervous system, because it's the master system. But I address what I call the 5 pillars of health. So essentially, brain and nervous system is going to be number one. Mindset would be number two. Nutrition's number three. Exercise is number four, and then detox, de-stress is number five.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise is that if you can do things every day to take care of those 5 areas, then your health meter is going to tick up, even if it's just 1% at a time, which is normally what happens, right? People that are out there that are dealing with pain, suffering, diseases of any type, for the most part, we didn't get there overnight. It's not like we woke up one day and then all of a sudden we have it. The research out there shows that, like, even people that get cancer, for instance, generally had that growing in them for something like 8 to 12 years before it's detected.
Wow.
So these processes don't happen overnight. The beautiful part, though, is if your body created it, your body can destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we got there over time, if you start implementing these health routines and start just taking these measures to make yourself healthy, your body is going to be able to reverse it in quicker time than it created it also. So if you can do something to, treat your brain and nervous system right every day, right? Get adjusted, use nootropics, implement things like moving your body and everything, right? That's actually giving yourself neural feedback and helping your brain as well, because your brain, mind and body are one and the same, right? Your brain is the physical thing that allows your mind to express through the body, but it's known that exercise is going to help your mental health as well. So
Mm-hmm.
brain and nervous systems, number one. Mindset, so meditate, gratitude journaling, um, be observant of the stuff you're watching and putting into your mind, because if you, there's plenty of science behind this. Like, we could go into like quantum nerdy stuff, but essentially, depending on the thoughts you're having and the emotions you're having, you start putting out certain vibrations. And if the vibrations that you're putting out are more gratitude, love, grace, you know, those joy, things like that, inspiration, those emotions have a higher vibration, are more powerful in general, and carry with it growth, evolution, healing, basically making you thrive.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, if you're having more fear, anger, anxiety, frustration in your life, those emotions take on a lower, more defensive, and just trying to survive. So are you just trying to survive, or are you trying to thrive? So if you're watching stuff every day, watching the news, stop watching the news, people, for frick's sake. Uh, if you're watching the news, 95% of it's fear based. The war in Iraq, the war on drugs, the war on coronavirus, war,
Right.
right? All the mass psychopaths in the past know that fear is generally the easiest way to control people. And now we have these boxes, these programming television telling us a vision, these boxes that are in everyone's houses that are broadcasting fear 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to watch it, that is. So be mindful of what you're also bringing into your paradigm, what you're allowing your body to watch, because if you're watching fear-based things, if you're playing violent video games, get your kids stopping to play violent video games. It's all propagating, because you start vibrating at the things that you're internally putting into yourself. So start learning something, start doing gratitude journaling, start listening to people like Joe Dispenza, people like Justin right here that's putting out truthful information. Sometimes a little fearful, but at the big scheme of things, it's educational, and we're that's what the whole Next Steps conference is about as well, is talking about what. All right, it's easy to recognize there's a problem, but what can we start doing now? What's the
Right.
action step that's going to be the higher echelon to start bringing this fear conscious world into the next place, into the next evolution, where we're not all afraid of the person in the next country next to us. Oh, the person across the river is our enemy, right? It's stupid, idiotic, and it's low conscious, unfortunately. That's the reason why so much of us are suffering. But it all starts in the mind. That's why mindfulness is such a big piece of this. That's why it's like pillar number 2 with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So brain, nervous system, mindset, mindfulness, nutrition, same thing with the mindfulness. If you are what you eat with nutrition, garbage in, garbage out. Stop eating processed foods. That's basically, because nutrition is such an argued thing. It's the most argued health science in my opinion, but my biggest guideline for people is eat it as close to nature gave it to you as possible. The less processed, the better. So whether you're a carnivore or a vegan or anything in between, try to have it as close to nature would deliver it to you is going to be the highest nutritional value you're going to get from it. And then exercise. If you stop moving, you're dead. Fact. If your heart stops moving, it's a bad day. So yeah, moving your body like every way you can, just trying to make sure that you're staying limber, staying moving, strong, everything like that. 100%. I tell people, try to get your heart rate up 20 minutes a day at least. So go for a walk if that's what it takes. But exercise, movement, stretching, yoga, Pilates, all that stuff's amazing for you. And that is going to be that symbiotic relationship. Moving your body is going to help feed your brain and mind as well. Mm-hmm. So they're very, very, very intimately linked. You can't separate the mind and body. So knowing the steps to start ticking your health up like that is key. And then the last one is simple: detox, de-stress. Means we have so many toxins around us. Try to eat organic, try to get filtered water, filtered showers, things like that. Detoxing and de-stressing. Toxic people are a thing as well. So make sure that you're mindful what's going in your body. And if you can start cleaning things up using more natural products, things like that, it doesn't happen all overnight, but just start. If you start buying the natural soap instead, right? Something as simple as that. Go buy a water filter. Simple things, little by little by little by little. But if you start plugging in the 5 pillars of health, I promise you your health meter is going to start ticking up 1% at a time. And you're going to be able to start getting out of that defensive survival mode into the thriving, creative essence of things. That's where life starts to flourish and where life starts to become beautiful and exciting, right?
We here at Vigilant News want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to gain freedom and deal a blow to the powers that be. One of the things that the powers that be do is they wage biological, psychological, and spiritual war on us. And there's a whole bunch of very important things that we need to do to defend ourselves from each of those types of war and build up our strength, our resources, and our unity so that we can actually make decisive blows against the enemy and not each other. One of the things that's important to do for that is health. And that's why Vigilant News partnered up with Ascent Nutrition, who's really the leading, as far as I can tell in my research, the leading nutritional company out there. There's a lot of nutritional companies out there, but Ascent Nutrition offers some of the best nutrition that you can imagine, because Lance Shetler, the guy who founded Ascent Nutrition, he's like us. He wants to provide high quality nutrition, and the defense is against the ceaseless biowarfare waged against us. As everybody knows now, because of COVID, we have a nonstop, highly funded, highly coordinated, health-destroying machine that is pointed directly at our children, at each other, and our friends and families. And it's surprising how many of us aren't necessarily doing the best things we could. So that's why we partnered with Ascent Nutrition. I wanted to show you guys some of the really amazing products they offer. So first of all, we have pine needle extract. Pine needle extract has shikemic acid in it, and it does some really amazing things. There's spike proteins floating around everywhere because of the biowarfare of the clot shots that happened recently. Well, with pine needle extract, you can actually guard against those spike proteins. Everybody serve pine needle tea. Well, pine needle tea can be used to literally disintegrate or break down those spike proteins and restore proper health function, which is really important, because even if you didn't get the jab, all the people who did get the jab are shedding spike proteins like crazy, and it's affecting our health. My wife can testify to this. She never got the jab once, but when we go to visit our family who's been jabbed, she almost always has some kind of weird issue that happens. We also have glyphosate. Glyphosate, Roundup, has been proven to cause cancer, a result of the Monsanto trials that happened somewhat recently, a few years ago. And we know for a fact that it erodes your gut and it causes all sorts of health problems. But with shikamic acid, you can actually help restore that, because it helps break down that damaging effect. Shikamic acid also helps restore cardiovascular function. So if you've got blood clots, you need blood thinners, you're taking all sorts of stuff like that, shikamic acid in pine needle extract can actually help with that. And it can also help restore nervous system ending, the myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath is a part of your nerve that acts as a kind of like insulator for the wire, the electrical conductor that is your nerve. And when those things break down, you get all sorts of issues that come with that: brain fog, low energy, health issues, organs not working properly, all sorts of things. But with pine needle extract, you can deal a blow to those things. Humic and fulvic acid. Humic and fulvic acid helps absorb or chelates heavy metals. So chelation is the process where heavy metals get like magnetically sucked out of our body. And it turns out, if anybody's not aware of this, a lot of vaccines have tons of heavy metals in it. We have heavy metals like strontium and various other heavy metals being sprayed in from the atmosphere via geoengineering, which, thanks to the recent Tennessee bill that was just passed, is finally being acknowledged. So we've been, all this global warming nonsense is probably just from the geoengineering that we've been dealing with. But it's more than that. It's bioengineering. They're literally changing the face of the earth through terraforming, and part of it involves heavy metals. Well, you can help guard against these heavy metals with humic and fulvic acid. They'll help strip it from the body. Ours in particular is in a hyper bioavailable form. Even though we have to put an expiration date on there, it technically doesn't expire, because the compound is literally millions of years old. But the FDA makes us do stupid stuff, for their own reasons, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you. The other thing about our humic and fulvic acid is it's tiny. It literally fits in a nano-sized amount or dosage, in the sense that, to use a fancy buzzword, it's tinier than most humic and fulvic, so it can get into those hard-to-reach places in your bodies. That also helps break down pesticides. It actually has been shown to help break down radiation. So if Fukushima is, scaring you, this is something that can help. Or the radiation from these things, portable radiation devices that we carry around with us all over the place, it can help with that. It can also help with microplastics as well. There are dozens of other amazing products here. These are just some of the ones that they have available as all sorts of different things here. So I strongly suggest you use promo code Justin Stillness, and you can save 10% off. You can also save when you do a subscription. The subscription will not only give you points and that you can use and get free products down the line, but you can also save 10% every time that subscription goes out, and you get free shipping. So it's just like Amazon. All right, everybody, thank you so much for supporting your health, supporting your mind, and staying on the digital battlefield. Let's get back to the interview. Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of the fondest memories I have are being out in nature. This is a little bit, it's like kind of like a fine line. Sometimes you're like right on the edge. Maybe you went a little too far and you're almost like had an accident, but it felt amazing, and you kind of like right at that zone of proximal development, as they say in psychology.
Yep.
So, okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to talk about some of the top things that people can use to treat their various conditions based on your experience as a chiropractor. But before we go down that road, I wanted to dive a little bit down the rabbit hole a bit, because I know you're into this kind of stuff too. And you just described your 5 pillars, which I think are spot on as far as I can tell based on my experience. But we don't live in a world that teaches us that. Our culture, which I would describe as like the spiritual and psychological womb of who you are. The womb doesn't end when you leave your mother. You just enter another womb, which is society.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't teach us these things. It's almost like, I don't think it's been like this forever. I think this started somewhere. I don't know. Certainly when Rockefeller medicine hit and the Flexner report was coming out and all this kind of stuff. But it's like our culture has been toxified. If you just do the opposite of what the mainstream's telling you to do, you're probably at least pointing in the right direction. They're now, because of COVID, exercise is bad. It could give you a heart attack. Raw milk is bad. Eating raw foods is bad. Like, not eating pasteurized food is bad. So it's like all the things that were prescribed from the supposed health experts, a la Anthony Fauci and whatnot, don't seem to actually be helping us. And it almost seems like, if you look at symbiotic organisms versus parasitic organisms, that we have a kind of like parasitism happening in our culture right now, because the parasite wants to keep the host alive and keep them there, but it'll often sometimes introduce things into the host that make it addicted to the parasite in a lot of ways, which is really interesting. Um, and it kind of seems like there's some of that going on in our world today, certainly with health and arguably potentially everything. That's certainly my opinion. So, to what extent do you think just simply getting healthy? I'll ask the question this way: to what extent do you think simply getting healthy is a kind of an ability to rip the monkey off your back, to have an act of rebellion towards forces that might not want you to be healthy and want to prevent you from thriving?
So I will. I'll simplify it first, and then I'll kind of broaden it. But we I mean, this goes into many ancient philosophies and stuff as well, but we always talk about the Trinity, which is
Mm,
essentially, the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost would be one version of it, but depending on your esoteric or lens where you started getting your information, the way I try to put that in more palpable terms nowadays would be your mind, your body, your spirit. So you can't separate the mind, body, and spirit. The mind is the piece that we can never go out and measure the mind specifically. We're never gonna. You could dissect someone's whole brain, energy, anything like that, and you'll never find their mind, quote
mm,
unquote. It's something
mhm,
that's not palpable. So these are the energetic principles, the energetic piece of the person, right? The body is the physical part of the system, and then I look at the spirit as a culmination of both our internal spirit, what's driving and animating us, but also that extends into the grander consciousness, into the big universe as well, right? We because these things are so intimately linked, um, we're constantly, and this is scientific in nature as well. Edison has talked about this, Einstein has talked about this, but the brain itself and the heart, right, our body and mind together are basically a giant electromagnet.
mm,
So our mind, the brain is the antenna for our mind to receive things, but essentially the brain is a transmitter and receiver of energy, right? The
mhm,
mind works in very similar principles, even faster than the speed of light, it turns out. So if you pray for someone, the instant you start thinking about that, there's an effect in the universe that starts uh, crystallizing the next instance of this universal being. We got here, meaning all of us are living this experience through collective consciousness. So the experience I'm having, the experience you're having, is a derivative of past descendants, people that have helped create where we are now. And they are all, even though many of them are dead at this point, their mind essence, their consciousness is what went forward and helped shape what we're living right now. And
Mm-hmm.
there's ebbs and flows that happen in the universe. Right now, we are in a ebb or flow of things where things are a little bit more constricted. And that's why people are suffering so bad. And it's is everyone suffering like that? No. That's the great news, because what's one possible for one of us is possible for all of us, right? But grand scheme of things, the earth is kind of at a down point right now. Whether we're talking, this is what, again, going back to the war conversation, but I mean, all the wars for the past 150, 200 years are actually more banker and
Yep.
globalist. They're corporate wars. When you look into this stuff, there's money and resources behind it every time. That's the reason there's raping, pillaging, and everything that's happening. But it's all coming from low conscious places, basically hoarding, greed, and uh, survival mentality. Because people out there think that there aren't a lot of people, not everyone, again, but the majority of the world out there right now thinks that there's not enough resources on this earth for everyone. Me personally, I think that's a bad conclusion. I think that's a childish and immature conscious outlook on life. But again, it is, you just have to accept where things are at regardless of your opinion on it. You're better off at least being honest with yourself to say this is the where things are. Now, what we experience because of it in our minds, our bodies, and everything like that has a lot to do with where you are at internally. So, if your thoughts, emotions, and stuff are much more pure and higher vibrating, your body is going to follow suit, because your consciousness, your mind, is your energetic part of the system, is what will shape the material piece around it. And this is, again, this is very scientific. Like, even uh, again, this goes into quantum physics, which is super nerdy, but really, like, Einstein said it, Edison. It's a well-known phenomena, but essentially it's just like a magnet. If you hold a magnet underneath a piece of paper with iron filings on it, right? You hold the magnet underneath the piece of paper, there's a field that magnet puts out, and you'll watch those iron filings start to take on a certain shape, right?
Yep.
So the field of the magnet is what dictates. There we go. Sorry, my computer just glitched there a second. But the field of the
No
matter,
worries.
or the field of the magnet, is what dictates the physical structure of the iron filings,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
The same exact thing exists actually with all material stuff that we deal with in the world. So people that have studied basic chemistry, right? We have an atom is the smallest unit of material measurement, uh, for all intents and purposes, without going down a bigger rabbit hole. But the atom is generally considered our smallest unit of material measurement. And atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what atom we're talking about, we have different numbers of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Well, that means that everything that we know of materially in the universe is built off of the same exact things. So what if everything's built of the same thing? The question is, what is it that starts making a difference between, hair versus glass versus metal versus, right? So we have all these different materials that are built off of the same thing. So everything's built from the same thing. So what starts to differentiate the difference between metal and glass and plastic and all this stuff starts to become a field or a vibration that allows those protons, neutrons, and electrons to interact in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so the field behind it dictates the matter. And what they've shown through many experiments at this point, we can talk about the placebo effect as a version of this, but you can look into like Masaru Emoto is a guy that started doing experiments with crystallizing water with happy thoughts or sad thoughts. And the outcome is happy thoughts make beautiful crystals. Sad thoughts and bad thoughts start making distorted, ugly ones. They've
Yep.
done the same thing with plants. There's been different iterations of this experiment that shows that your thoughts and the vibrations based around your thoughts will start crystallizing the material around you to the point where even the chakra centers, right, on a health level, you have crown, your third eye, your throat chakra, your heart, right, solar plexus, all the way down through your root. Interestingly enough, there is a neurologic center that is based with every chakra, and then there is also a glandular system that's based with every chakra.
Hmm.
So each one of your chakras is actually putting out a different electromagnetic frequency, which starts helping your body crystallize in different ways. And having that energy stuck in any way where things aren't flowing properly is where things start to densify, where things start to crystallize and become even more dense. Because the highest essence of us we're beings of light. So the highest essence of us, and again, it goes into, we could take the conversation into much um, different realms. It's probably not going to be a today conversation, but really some esoteric teachings will show that as your consciousness evolves, you actually start to lose the physical material body again. So like this would be like if you believe in reincarnations, things like this. It's like, okay, your soul recycles into the next higher level, which some people call angels, archangels. Again, looking into different ancient philosophies or whatever, we call them different things. But again, it's an interesting thought that it's like as you become more enlightened, your body, they call it enlightened because light is the highest essence of being in a way. Light, and again, again, there's a lot of science behind this, but light, from everything I've found, light is the life force, the thing that allows everything kind of comes back to light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would be even further down the echelon from the atom. So the atom would be the smallest material unit. Light would be the smallest unit, energetically, materially, everything, because energy is the bigger platform. So like energy, I have a diagram on one of my presentations, but really like when scientifically When you look at even an atom, it's something like 99.999999% space, and then only 0.00001% matter.
Right.
So there's more space. There's more space in an atom, what we call an atom, than there is even material technically. But that's why energy is the biggest platform. And then the field from the energy crystallizes the matter, and that's what we observe, feel, everything every day. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I went to school for physics way back when, and there's a lot of what you're saying actually is pretty represented in mainstream science. And there's also something I'm sure you've run into because it sounds like you've dabbled quite a bit called entrainment and cymatics.
Yeah, yeah, yep,
So, from a from a health perspective, I would say, your choices affect your mind and your mind affects your body. And so that
yep,
you're kind of like you were just describing the field state that you create through your whether you're in gratitude or you're stressed, or that's going to affect what you think you need, which is then going to affect what you do, which then affects the health of your body,
yep,
something like that. And so you can kind of take that principle and extend it up to a society. If a society is like an organism, I mean, they even refer to it as the human organism, so
yep,
all these human beings, right? What do we do when all these cells in the human organism, all 7 billion of them or 8 billion of them, are, acting in a certain way? And, or in our country, for example, we'll talk about the United States. What happens when most of us are plugged into a cell phone that distracts us, or watches news that stresses us out, or,
yep,
doesn't use the body properly? So we're sedentary, we're moody, we're stressed from life. We've got childhood traumas, like, so there's all these different things that affect us. And so what that kind of does holistically, or as the final result, is it creates the kind of world we're living in right now. The
yep,
kind of world that values the mainstream medical system versus things and tools that can actually help you stay
yep.
healthy. So
So
yeah, go
the
ahead.
next echelon. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bruce Lipton or not.
Yeah.
He
Oh yeah.
he talks a lot about this, but it's the same principle that he talks about, is like, pure health is when every cell in your body is appropriately communicating properly and helping each other out. If you look at the earth as an organism, it's going to be the same thing. So really, we've gone through different revolutions, the industrial revolution, now we're talking about the technological revolution, into the information revolution at this point. And then his thought is that we're probably going to be entering the health revolution and then the consciousness revolution, because
Hmm.
if you if you don't have your health, you don't have anything really, right? and
Right.
and
Yep.
being truly healthy is going to be a joining of the mind, body, and spirit, where your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions are all congruent in a prosperous way. Because it comes back to natural law. Laws are immutable. They cannot be changed. That's the definition of a law, right? So if we're talking about laws of the universe, right, there are certain principles that we will never get away from. One of them being is that if anything starts to get too out of balance, the universe has an interesting way of rebalancing it
Hmm.
in one way or another. So if you start fighting the universe, and or let's say fighting people, eventually people are going to fight you back because things get out of balance. So if you become too far out of balance in your actions, then the universe is going to start fighting you back inevitably.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Right? So that's, if you can if you can start becoming symbiotic in nature, and this is what I try to get people to kind of open up their minds to a little bit. But the again, everything goes in ebbs and flows, but we're way better off. This is like, again, what Bruce Lipton's saying. We're way better off as a culture, as an earth unit, a living earth. We're way better off if all of our governments slash more of all of our people on earth, because governments are just a made up boundary line between whatever. But if all the people on earth could actually grow up and start helping each other instead of fighting each other, that's when we actually start evolving into the next essence, or the next level of humanity. Because there's plenty of resources on this damn earth. If we could stop hoarding them and start teaching each other and start helping each other, our technological advances would be out the roof at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's the symbiotic. Are we working? Are we working in sync, where both of our energies are coming together to help each other, or are we working against each other and crushing and eliminating each other?
Right.
It's a
Exactly.
mathematical principle. It's as certain as math, where we can help each other. 1 + 1 = 2, or we can go against each other, and 1 - 1 = 0. So are we going
Mm-hmm.
to get to 2, or are we going to get to 0? Are we going to work together, or are we going to destroy each other?
Right. Yep.
Right?
And there's people that have a vested interest in, not
The
wanting us
latter,
to work together.
unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, the to use an analogy for what you were talking about, I can't remember the way you phrased it, but I'm sure everybody's worked at a job that just like harangues them. They have a terrible boss. They're dealing with angry people, whatever. So you might be a pretty upbeat person, but if somebody kicks you and you stub your toe enough and things like this, then eventually, no matter how hard you try to sequester that energy of being harangued or harassed, it's going to come home with you. And you're probably going to snap at your loved one. You'll be
Yeah.
less patient with your kids, whatever the
Yep.
situation is, right? And so this is why I think, from my understanding, my philosophy is like, because the truth is a kind of holistic thing, your attitude towards your life needs to be a little bit holistic too. And I think a lot of religions embody this idea too, because if you allow your free will, and if you embrace your life through your free will, then now those things that you're trying to push away from you, which you can't really push away from you, you can't push a bad day out of your system. It's not like you can vomit it up in the bathroom. Like the bad day is going to be with you whether you like it or not. But
Yep.
if you use your will to accept it, your choice, which is arguably one of the most powerful things we have to work with, then you can actually kind of digest that bad experience,
Yes.
and
Yep.
through that spiritual philosophy. And I think, for me, it's God that is a big tool for that. Other people might be something else, but I think
Yep.
the substance of whether you call it God or religion or whatever is basically the same thing. It's this becoming whole within yourself.
Yep.
And, we need other people to do that. So like, psychologically, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but the social isolation has a corrosive effect in almost everywhere you can imagine,
Oh
as
yeah.
we saw with COVID.
I mean, solitary confinement is considered one of the worst things you can do to someone.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you know what the worst form of child abuse is? It's not sexual abuse. It's not physical abuse. It's not even, like physical poisoning. It's neglect. Neglect is the worst and most damaging form of child abuse.
Yep.
So, and it's not like we change when you turn 18, all of a sudden you need something different. It's like, no, the same basic needs are like a flower blossoming inside you all throughout your life. So I would say the parasitic elite has learned how to do is to make us fight each other, make us fight our own being, make
Yep.
us fight our relationship with reality itself, and then try to keep that all within so that we
Yep.
never, we're trying to pretend like everything's fine when it's not, when you've had a bad day. We're trying to pretend like everything's fine when your back hurts, or, you feel overweight, or whatever the situation is. And if we learn how to just accept the truth, so that's the relationship with each other, or sorry, relationship with all that is, and then share the truth with each other, our relationships with other people, especially our tribe, our close-knit relationships. Those two things right there, what I just described, have also been documented scientifically to be very rewarding to your health. You're psychologically better, you feel healthier, your body functions better. And then it kind of comes full circle right back to where we started with chiropractic, because that's basically what you were describing when you talked about how chiropractic works. Am I right?
Yeah. Yep. It's allow your body brain to process through the crap, and
Mm,
you're on the right journey, as you kind of put it. All of us are going to have bad days. So the question becomes, do you allow it to be a bad minute, a bad hour, a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad
that's good.
year?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about your persona. If you start getting into bad months and bad years where every day is waking up and it's a drag, that's because you haven't processed stuff of the past, and you're allowing external stimuli, which you don't have control over 99.9999999% of what happens out there.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing people have control of is how do you spend your time and attention. Those are the two truest spiritual currencies, is what I call them. So if you can start focusing your time and attention in different ways, then you're going to start, if as long as they're in a growth way, you're going to start upticking, and you're going to stop letting those external stimuli that you don't have any control over disturb your inner peace, your inner oneness. Because if you're breathing, it's a good day.
Mm-hmm.
If we get some water and food, it's an even better day. We got shelter, that's awesome. We have someone next to us that we love, life's great. Right? So if we have the bare necessities, you know, air, food, shelter, water, and personal connection, life is going to keep going, at least, right? Might suck, but when you can find the gratitude and grace in it, the beauty in even the most challenging things, that's when you wake up every day and life takes on a new meaning, because you're
Mm-hmm.
not letting those external stimuli disturb the inner peace and gratitude. And it's a miracle waking up every day. At the end of the day, right, at the grand scheme of things, waking up every day is a blessing and a miracle, as long as you choose to view it that way.
Right.
And
Yep.
all of us have the capability, but we got to start reprogramming our psyche and our emotion using things like gratitude journaling, meditation, prayer, um, you know all of these things that's why I say self knowledge is the most important knowledge. Figure out who you are, like, at your truest beings, because oftentimes the people around us are dictating too much of our thoughts and actions in the first place. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing things too much for other people oftentimes. So if we can get our internal compass and squared away, that again, those external things are going to stop knocking you around and taking you on this roller coaster of like going through life like we have no idea what's happening, and then again, like I said, it might turn into a bad year eventually.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a good place to start winding down. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about, some of the things that chiropractic can help with, because, in my mind, I'm not entirely clear. So if you were to talk to, your average human and living in this world today filled with all sorts of potential challenges and issues and health problems, whatever they might be, what is like the top 5 to 10 things that people should know when it comes to what they can use chiropractic for in their own lives?
So I'll split this into two parts, right? From the medical treatment based paradigm.
All right, we had a little bit of a technical challenge. For those of you who are not aware of the time and date, there's a massive outage happening, something to do with CrowdStrike. Like airports are down, all news stations are down. It's pretty crazy. So maybe that's what's causing the technical issues. But you were just telling us about some of the things that chiropractic do for people so they can be aware of some of the things that they can use this incredible tool for. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so before we got interrupted there, apologize. So basically, I'll put the chiropractic kind of into two camps. So just from more strictly like your body feeling crappy, symptom type of land. Anything with back pain, neck pain, headaches, if you're having tingling, numbness, things like that, those are all areas that chiropractors are very, very familiar with, because we are neurologic experts as well as musculoskeletal experts. So that's so from the treatment side of things, what the medical community would say chiropractic is good for, that's really the camp. But if you're really looking at upgrading your health and life, which is the higher echelon in the chiropractic realm, then we're talking about functioning, healing, everything like that. So if you're looking at just upgrading your overall health for performing better, they have studies even with athletes having higher muscular outputs, things like that, right? Chiropractic is going to be helping your body function better in general. So if you're dealing with any sort of health issues, or if you're just looking at upping the game in life, then chiropractic is also going to be a great fit for you, because you know that when you're walking out of there, you're going to be more energetically enriched. You're going to be having less of those programs running, and things are going to be able to heal faster, whatever it is, right? So of course, if you're dealing with some other stuff, there's other strategies, nutrition, stretching, exercise, stuff like that can be used alongside chiropractic. But chiropractic's going to help you absorb all that nutrition better. It's going to be able to help you, use any of these things better in general. If your energy system is higher, your capacity, function, and healing is higher. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That makes total sense to me. I mean, it's like, if your body's working better, you're going to be healthier, and everything you want to do is going to be better, it sounds like.
Exactly. So to put it in perspective also, there's plenty of miracle stories. So honestly, even the first chiropractic adjustment, there was a guy that lost his hearing from falling off a tractor, and he didn't have his hearing for years. And then the first chiropractic adjustment actually adjusted him, and he ended up getting his hearing back.
Wow.
So there are tons of miracle stories as well. Vertigo is another thing that I have a lot of success with. If you're having dizziness, stuff like that, vertigo cases. I've heard of almost miraculous stories where people, even with cancers and stuff like that, chiropractic is the thing that starts to turn their health around. So saying that chiropractic is a treatment for those diseases, but I know for a fact that it's going to help in the process. And there are those cases where chiropractic was that thing that put it over the edge. Another weird one, people even in comas, because again, if the brain's not getting all that proper feedback, oftentimes people in comas just usually, so I tell people, if I could only touch one area, it would be right here, because this is where your spine meets your brain stem. And if this part of your body is out specifically, or especially, life just isn't going to be turned on nearly as well. And there are those crazy cases where even people in comas will get adjusted, and that will actually bring them out of a coma, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Asthma cases getting better. Usually it's not like one and done or anything either, but getting chiropractic regularly where you're slowly shutting down these unnecessary programs, allowing your brain and nervous system to start processing that unprocessed stress in your life, whether it's physical stress, chemical stress, mental or emotional stress. Those are the things that every second of every day the brain's processing, but those ones that are unprocessed are what's starting to turn dense, starting to malfunction and dysfunction in the body. And that's where we come in. Getting regular chiropractic care helps the body ease those things and start processing those things appropriately so that you start shutting down those programs and getting your bandwidth for life back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one in particular I heard of. I'm probably not saying it right, but it's like the Atlas reset or something like that, where go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, that's what that bone right there is called, is the atlas.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
it's also called your C1 or cervical spine 1, but essentially it's called the atlas because that's actually the, like, Atlas in Greek mythology is the one that's holding up the world.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
your atlas is literally where your occiput or your entire skull sits on the spine. So if that bone is out, that actually starts putting pressure on the brain stem, and then the slew of things can happen from there. Just from this one bone being out, I've heard of all sorts of things going awry because
Right.
every signal from your body has to travel through this part of your spine to get to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So that atlas is out, and that communication to the brain is suffering, from any part of your body. I've heard of people getting sciatica from having this bone out, to anything
Wow.
from asthma to digestive issues, constipation. It's a whole array of things because again, depending on where those nerves are going, that's being compressed or shut down, that part of the body starts to dysfunction, and then we start getting symptoms.
Right.
Yeah. So Atlas reset is 100%. If I could only touch one bone in the body, luckily I have more options because, we're not restricted like that. But,
Right.
if I have only touch one place in the body, the Atlas would be the place.
So I just I don't know if I got a chance to tell you this. I think I did, but when we were at Next Steps, I was dealing with a medical problem I had contracted in late July, early February. I had an abscess the size of a basketball in my body that developed. I'm not sure when, but had some major issues. Like I literally almost died. I waited to go to the hospital because, frankly, I don't trust doctors all that much. And maybe I shouldn't have. But anyway, when I got there, they did a CT scan. Yeah, CT scan, found this massive, abscess in my abdomen. Thankfully, they didn't have to operate. They put in a drainage tube, but I had to have like a 14-inch drainage tube shoved in my back for almost a month and a half. And, it cost me, I think the total, it's like a bunch of different ones they threw at me, but it's somewhere on the order of like $30,000. So, obviously you're not going to be able to like do major surgery on somebody, but just to put it in perspective, like the cost, because you kind of said that in the beginning. I kind of wanted to end on this note that like, this isn't like cost prohibitive, right? It's not like you're going to spend 20 grand a year dealing with some of this stuff. You could do a pretty good treatment cycle with chiropractic for a pretty affordable price. Is that right?
Yeah, and of course, it's going to vary where you go, but to put it in perspective for people, a year of care for chiropractic, depending on where you go, is going to run you anywhere from, because some take insurance and stuff like that, but I'll say anywhere from 800 to maybe $5,000 a year. I'm around the 1,500 mark for a year of care, and essentially that gives you all the care that you need for the year. You can come in multiple times a week if you need it. I stick just in the chiropractic lane. A lot of chiropractors, due to scope of practice, can do physical therapies. So they have, stretching and TENS units and a lot of other therapies that they do in the office as well. But just the chiropractic part, that's going to be your approximate price point.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, hey, Tom, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. We've had an awesome conversation. We definitely went to a bunch of cool places with it. Tell our audience where they can find you, what your website, socials, anything you care to share.
So the best place, the easiest to remember, especially, is bookdrtom.com. So, as you can see under my name, Genesis Optimal Living is the name of my Woodstock practice. And then I actually have one in Roswell, Georgia as well, that's called Gentle Hands Healing, which I ended up buying about a year ago. So I just kept the name the same. But yeah, you can get all my information at bookdrtom.com. That gets you to both of those sites, gets you to booking websites. And then I also have recordings and some information of interviews like this on there that are just past things that I've done. I think I might even have the next steps presentation on there. I'll have to double check, but if I don't, I'll get it up there soon. Because yeah, I'm love doing educational things like this as well, and helping people, get to the next level in their health game. If we can up our health, we're gonna up the world. Bottom line.
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it. I'll put those links in the description, everybody. And Tom, thanks again.
Absolutely, Justin. Till next time, it'll be soon, I'm sure. So.